All right, what's up, Bulldogs? All right, today I have my good friend Jay Vincent here, and I got to tell you guys, Jay is someone who completely changed the way that I work out. I mean, this is something that I've been lifting weights for 20 years, right? And for me to change everything based on something someone says, it's got to be good. So I really wanted to have Jay here, and Jay's an awesome guy, by the way. Just really cool guy, really just a gentleman, as I would say. And but anyway, I want to have Jay here on the channel to talk about this because it just seems pretty unbelievable, I think, to most people, and I wouldn't believe it myself, except that I saw it. But yeah, welcome, Jay.
Hey, John, thanks for having me. It's good to have an opportunity to teach some more people these principles.
Yeah. So yeah, let's kind of just start off by talking about what's the I mean what normal people, most people think is the way to gain muscle, lose fat, right? What's kind of the standard thing, and like why is it, what are your thoughts on that and why that's wrong?
Well, people are under the impression, and I'm really not sure why. I think it mostly comes down to bodybuilding tradition.
Hmm.
Bodybuilders are very traditional, very superstitious, and when someone gets into bodybuilding, they respond so well that it almost doesn't matter what they do due to
Yeah.
their genetics. So what they end up doing is just kind of, hey, so normally what happens is somebody's in the gym, they start lifting weights for one reason or another, and they blow up.
Yeah.
Another bodybuilder in that gym generally sees this kid's like, wow, he's got great bodybuilding potential. And usually what happens is he'll approach him and say, hey, you got great potential. You start bodybuilding. And it's normally that old school bodybuilder that teaches the dude what to do. So it's
Right.
kind of like monkey see, monkey do tradition. And the fact is, some people respond to exercise in a freakish manner to the point where they could do almost anything, high volume, low volume. They could throw rocks at a wall and probably still respond the same. And this is kind of why this high volume, all these exercises, multiple sets, multiple exercises per muscle group, this is how it became popular. Because when you're when you want to find out information on how to build the most amount of muscle, naturally you're going to look for the individual who has the most amount of muscle. And this
Right.
is going to be your professional bodybuilders. But a lot of people are completely oblivious to the how much genetics and drug use play in this.
Hmm.
They don't even know most of the time. They think that they look that way because they must know something special.
Right.
So what most people do is they adopt the training philosophy or the training programs of professional bodybuilders. And the comparison I like to make is it's like, you first buy a bicycle for the sake of, cycling. You're not going to jump on Lance Armstrong's workout the first day, are you? No,
Right.
absolutely
Right.
not. He is a high level athlete. And it's the same thing if you adopt a bodybuilder's workout. It's like way out of your league. And the truth is, a normal individual with average genetics, which most people who are in the gym are going to have very average genetics, very average responses, they are going to respond with far less exercise in terms of volume and
Yeah.
pushing themselves much harder. And another problem with this is many people are completely unaware of how hard you have to push your body, aka how much discomfort you need to generate in order to turn on that growth mechanism. So most people are under the assumption you could substitute training hard with training more, and it is simply not true. And what we've got is millions of people
Hmm.
embarking on an exercise protocol which they believe requires 6 or 7 days a week in the gym, which for many people with the discipline and the lifestyle that's just not sustainable for them. And most people are giving up because they're under
Yep.
the impression they need this much. But what the vast majority of exercise literature suggests is very low frequency is effective if done hard, and very low
Hmm.
volume compared to what most people do is very effective if done with a high level of intensity. So that's pretty much what I'm teaching. I'm just teaching the physiology based approach to exercise, which somehow got lost along the way due
Yeah.
to tradition and honestly, mostly Arnold Schwarzenegger's popularity.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's so true. It's so crazy how I just wonder how we've gotten so far off base. And I mean, even just in my own fitness journey, when I first started lifting, in fact, my first book was Arnold Schwarzenegger's Bodybuilding Encyclopedia of Bodybuilding, right? And so, I did split routines, right? Chest and tries, and the back and buys and all that, and I had success. Like, I gained a lot of muscle, I gained a lot of size, right? And but I could never cut, I could never get like as lean as I wanted to. And then over the years, I finally, I think maybe like 7 or 8 years ago, I started experimenting with doing full body workouts. So I started doing full body workouts 3 times a week. And I was still doing like 2 hour, workouts, like 5, 6 sets of each exercise, multiple parts per body part, but doing full body workouts. And I realized I was getting actually better results because I was having more rest days in between, but I still thought I needed to work at that high intensity. And then, once I saw what you were doing, I was like, oh, there's no way, this isn't possible, right? This is like, you can't do this. It's not possible. But we went to the gym one day. We did that super hard workout, and and I didn't immediately switch over, but like what you were saying was registering in my mind. And so I started doing some of the research, like you were saying, and looking it up. And I was like, damn, like almost everybody on YouTube is wrong. I've been wrong my entire life, right? Even though I built a physique doing it. And so I started slowly adopting what you were saying about the one set. Like, I started off with like 2 or 3 sets, but I was more focused on just trying to get it to absolute failure and focused on the contraction and not as much range of motion. And just because I knew in my head what I was trying to accomplish now at that point. And then I started backing it off more and more until I got to the point where I fully committed over probably about 2 months ago to just 3 full body workouts a week, 20 minutes, just one set per exercise to failure. And I have the best physique I've ever had, with the least amount of work. So it's like, it was just mind blowing to me that so many people, and I had it wrong. Like, so I understand why, people get the results with it, but it's just crazy to believe that that's possible. So what is the actual like science behind it? Because I know that, people hear me saying this, right? And they're probably thinking, no way, John, you're full of crap. This is, it worked for you. Or they're going to say, John, you're on TRT. Okay. Which, I mean, I built I might have 5 pounds more muscle than I did before I was on TRT. Okay. That's
with good genetics.
Yeah. If you go back and look at my videos, you can see my physique before TRT. It was basically what I have now, except for maybe I've got maybe 5 more pounds, but I'm more lean now with what with your workout program. But so how does it work, right? Why, it seems so crazy that this could possibly be true, especially a lot of guys are very, they're very resistant to what you're saying and I'm saying, because they've spent so much time in the gym and then it feels like a waste. But what's the science behind it? Why does it work to just do one set to failure with a limited amount of frequency?
Well, unfortunately, a lot of people don't understand the physiological process behind muscle growth. Most people are under the impression that it's the act of moving the weight that is pumping up the muscle. That's wrong. Right. The exercise, the workout serves merely as a stimulus to turn on, if all the aspects of the workout, rest, recovery, nutrition, hydration, are in order, it is going to turn on a growth mechanism within the body. The most common growth mechanism or anabolic pathway that exercise scientists have discovered is something called the mTOR pathway, the mammalian target of rapamycin. So there are a couple of things in the workout that will turn on or signal particular stimuli or sensors or receptors, which lead down this whole biochemical path to turning on the mTOR pathway. And what exercise scientists have found is that it pretty much leaves up to 3 aspects of a workout that will turn on this pathway. So we've got metabolic tension, mechanical tension, metabolic stress, right, and mechanical muscle damage.
Right.
So mechanical tension, pretty simple. You have something on the outside of your muscle cells called mechanosensors. And these suckers turn on when there's a lot of tension on the muscle. Right. So there's a couple ways we could turn those on. We could lift really, really heavy, like a power lifter, is going to turn them on right away. But the negative side effect of that is increased force production, increased chance of injury. Well, power lifters are big, of course, because they're turning that on. Or, believe it or not, your body doesn't know the difference between lifting something really heavy or lifting a more moderate load to the point where you cannot lift it anymore. You're getting that same amount of tension. Say I did a set of 10 repetitions and I failed on the 11th. When I'm contracting as hard as I can on the 11th, it is turning on the mechanosensors the same way as if I were to deadlift 405 pounds. It's just safer.
Yeah.
So lifting to failure, first of all, not only turns on the mechanosensors properly, you're also recruiting all available motor units at that point. So your body recruits muscle fiber in sequential order based on demand or effort. So if I'm lifting something that's kind of light, it's not tapping into the fast twitch motor units, which physiologically are the most susceptible to hypertrophy. It's only when you are putting in a huge amount of effort into your muscles and creating a lot of tension that your body is going to recruit fast twitch motor units, which are the ones that grow most. And how do we get that? Well, again, we could lift something really heavy. We could lift explosively, or just take the set to failure. They go in sequence either way. If I lift something really heavy, they go in sequence quickly. If I do a set to failure, they go in sequence relatively slowly. So lifting to failure covers that. Now, we also want an adequate set duration. If you look at most people's sets, they last about 8 to 12 seconds. 1, 2, 3, 4. A set I perform lasts about 60 to 90 seconds of continuous muscular loading. So the amount of time under meaningful load that the muscle is being introduced to is really about 5 to 6 times more than what people are doing in one set. So I'm just condensing it all. So if we need 60 to 90 seconds of continuous time under meaningful load, well, I could break it up into 6 sets lasting 10 seconds each, or I can do one extended set with continuous tension. So this extended set duration, you're pushing your metabolism. It is constantly working and creating converting substrate into ATP, so that way your muscle's using it to create the contraction. While this is happening, you're getting what's called metabolic byproducts, lactate, calcium, all these other things that also turn on receptors on the muscle cell that stimulate the anabolic pathway. So now we got mechanical tension, metabolic stress. We're lifting to failure. We have a slow, relatively long set duration. So we're amplifying those two things. And the combination of both of these together, you get muscle damage, which is basically damage on the myofibrillar or the myosin heads deep in the sarcomere, deep in the muscle fiber. There's some research that shows that muscle damage contributes to muscle growth. And then there's about half of it that says it doesn't. So it's still up in the air. So we don't really know. But the combination of those two things will give you muscle growth. Now, the way people are doing it, it works. Of course it works. But I analogically, it's kind of like mopping the floor with a toothbrush. Why would you take 5, 6, 7 sets to accumulate mechanical tension and metabolic stress when you could do it all in one? There's no reason to rest in between either. Why are you resting in between? The goal of a workout is to inroad your muscles or weaken them. Taking a rest in between sets allows your muscles to recover, reduces the amount of overall stress and the aggressiveness of weakening them. So these are the basic physiological principles of muscle growth. The way I approach it is just more efficient and in many cases far more uncomfortable. And a lot of people kind of avoid discomfort in the gym. I mean, you've probably seen them. They'll get to the point where it starts to get tough and set it down. But believe it or not, when you get to that point where it starts to get difficult is when you're turning on the growth stimulus. And this is where people are leaving gains on the table. Now, there's a common myth that I want to address in training to muscle failure burns out your nervous system. No, it doesn't. Your nervous system recovers within a matter of minutes. What people are doing is they're applying muscle failure to that ridiculous huge amount of 5 or 6 set volume, and they're overtraining. Exactly. So if you are going to train to muscle failure, get the optimal stimulus, you got to cut your volume in half. You cannot combine it with that original volume, or you're going to overtrain. It's not nervous system fatigue. It's overtraining. So that's the basic physiology of it. This is pretty much irrefutable exercise physiology 101. My approach is just it's not my approach. This came out in the 70s with Arthur Jones and Nautilus. I'm
Right.
just kind of reteaching a younger generation.
I mean, even guys like, back in the day, because I think a lot of people are like, well, why didn't the old bodybuilders do this? Or why don't bodybuilders? But like Mike Mentzer was basically doing a very similar approach, right?
Yep.
And I mean, that dude, he had, I mean, for his time especially, he had an amazing physique, right? It was like, and yeah, it doesn't, I think it just doesn't compute with so many people because they're so used to it. I mean, because I went through the same resistance. So I was like, there's no way, right? And it just logically seems correct, like the resting between sets so that I can lift more on the next set. So I'm recovered fully. So I can get that's what I used to think. And then, then I realized, and then, when I saw what you were doing too, I started realizing that almost all that I was doing in the gym was kind of ego based. And so I was like, all right, I've stopped bench pressing. I stopped doing squats. I stopped doing deadlifts, and I stopped doing heavy weights. I mean, I try to do a heavy enough weight now on the machines where I don't have to do a ridiculous number of reps, because then it really does start to burn. And then it's hard to reach the failure because that lactic acid, or I guess maybe the hydrogen atoms, whichever one is, ions that are causing the burn. But so I try to keep it down to a range where I can, hit that sooner. But man, it is just it's just such phenomenal difference in the results. It's just it's crazy, and I'm getting so much more recovery now, right? Because it's like I do trail running up in the mountains and stuff, and I'm getting so much more recovery. Before, it would usually wipe me out trying to lift and run at the same time.
Yeah, and people need to remember there are 3 parts to this process. There's the workout, which is the stimulus.
Right.
Remember, it's only a stimulus, and the stimulus is a negative thing on the body. It's only when your body has recovered and adapted to this negative event that it becomes a positive thing. You have damage. You're using a lot of the body's valuable resources. You're creating inflammation. The workout itself is a negative event on the body. Then there's the second part, recovery. You have to recover from the damage and replenish everything that you used and lost during the workout. But then there's a third step to this that people ignore. That's the adaptation.
Right.
So you have stimulus, recovery, adaptation. Just because you feel recovered does not mean you've made the adaptation. It does not mean you've created muscle growth or a positive improvement in physical capacity. It doesn't mean it's time to go to the gym yet. And what a lot of people think is, the harder it's called Rocky Balboa syndrome. The harder they push their body, if they're pushing harder than everyone else, their results are going to be the best. But most of the time, they are just interrupting that adaptation process. It's just like getting a cut on your hand, and instead of putting a Band-Aid on it, letting it heal, you're slapping it all day, expecting it to heal. That's exactly pretty much what people are doing.
I forgot what it was called. I was trying to look up the name because I was actually just reading about this too I got this book on running called The Science of Running, and they were talking about, I forget the name of the guy that came up with the theory of biological adaptation, but it applies, like, you've got that period where they did the experiments on the adaptation, and they're like, all right, if you apply enough stimulus, then it causes a breakdown, and then that breakdown puts the organism in a mode of resistance and then adaptation. But then if you apply too much, then when the organism senses that it cannot adapt, it cannot compensate for that, it just shuts down completely. It just gives up. It doesn't try to resist at all, and boom, like the entire thing. That's the overtraining state, because that's what I was doing the same thing with running, because I had Bulldog Mindset, right? I was like, fucking hit the gym for 2 hours every day, run for 2 hours, just pushing everything to the limit, and I made progress, but I stunted my progress because I didn't have the recovery period in there, thinking more is better. And I think it's a noble thing to think more is better, but it's just not the science of it, right? We don't have that infinite recovery.
I mean, the best comparison you can make this to is like getting a suntan. So you want to stay out in the sun for the minimum amount necessary to stimulate a tan, right? You don't want to go as long as humanly possible, because the closer you get to that limit,
right,
you'll reach a point of diminishing returns. So basically what happens is the ultraviolet light damages your skin. It irritates your skin. So
Right.
you want to go in just the right amount of time before you get too much damage and result in a sunburn. That's adverse effects. What most people are doing in the gym is the equivalent of getting a sunburn to their muscles. They're doing too much, and they're having a negative effect. So you wouldn't, go and say you could handle 10 minutes in the tanning booth. That's all you can handle. 11 minutes, you'll burn. You don't
Right.
go in for 10 minutes and then wait 20 minutes and go back in for another 10 minutes.
Right.
That would result in burning. And it's
Right.
the damage accumulated from that UV light that stimulates your body to produce more melanin and darken your skin as a protective mechanism against the ultraviolet light. What your body is doing is simply trying to survive.
Yeah.
This deep level of muscle fatigue, the body senses that it is in danger, because if it had more strength, that external environmental stress placed on it, it would be able to handle it better. So what your body basically does is become stronger to have a little bit more reserve capacity.
Right.
Your body doesn't care how you look. It doesn't care what your abs look like. Your body is simply trying to do one thing, and that is get stronger, build stronger muscle tissue. As a side effect of muscle strength, you're going to have an increase in myosin deep in the muscle fiber, which is going to cause the muscle fiber to expand to make room for the new myosin, and you have muscle growth. You cannot have muscle growth or muscle strength. They come together. How much stronger you get, how much your muscle grows, depends on pretty much your genetics. But the point is, your body wants to get strong. Doesn't care how big its muscles are.
Right.
When you improve your muscular strength, the cardiovascular system, the system which supports the muscle with oxygen and things that it needs to produce contraction, that improves too. Your metabolic system, that improves in order to deliver nutrients to the working muscle and remove waste. And believe it or not, your bone and connective tissue will get stronger too. Yeah. The reason most people have injuries is because they're stimulating their connective tissue to get stronger, but at the same time beating it up in the process and never allowing it to. So doing all that running, you would have stimulated. I'm not sure if you sustained an injury, but you're creating micro trauma in that tissue every single time you run. And if you don't allow time for it to repair, it's just going to fail on you. And that's where people get injuries in the gym.
Yeah. It's crazy because, I applied basically, I took what you were teaching on the weightlifting and saw that working, and I applied it to my running. Right. So because I used to do a lot of slow, steady cardio and, long, and I still, to run a marathon, you have to do some degree of that, or you have to do some long runs.
Yeah.
But I used to do a lot of miles. I used to do like 70, 80 miles a week, and at 220, 230 pounds, that's a lot. Right. But I started applying the exact same principles. And instead of running 6 or 7 days a week, I run 4 days a week now. 3 of them are high intensity, where I'm running at 170, 180 beats per minute heart rate most of the time, like running up the mountains. Wow. or I'll do a time trial, like I ran around like a flat, just running, close to 7-minute miles, for 4 or 5 miles. And I'm seeing better results there. Like I'm faster than ever. I have better endurance. I'm getting, because I'm getting the recovery there, and I'm hitting it hard and getting that stimulus. I don't need to do all of this ridiculous number of junk miles. Right. And I think a lot of, running, it's the same thing. Like it's kind of funny because I'm listening to this book that just happens to be on the science of running. And he's basically saying the same thing. He's like, a lot of coaches in the running, they don't even really know anyway. They just kind of copy what another coach is doing because they have successful runners. And so a lot of, some of them are like really high mileage, 100-mile weeks. Some of them are low mileage, high intensity. Right. And both camps end up getting people that get results. But it's really, I think a lot of people think that everyone knows what they're doing. And in reality, like in the fitness space, whether it be running or lifting, most people don't. Well, most people really don't. Yeah.
It's just kind of like tradition. Like there's a limit, especially with running. I mean, a lot of it is neuromuscular nature. They're neural adaptations. And there's only so much neural adaptation you can sustain within a week, and I doubt it's 70 miles. It's probably more like 1 or 2 runs per week. So most people are doing way more than they need to, but out of fear, they don't want to try doing less, and then lose and blame it on that. So most of what people are doing, they're just kind of afraid to try something new. But in the fitness industry, there are so many people who are trying these bodybuilding routines. They're not seeing anything for results.
Right.
And they're just continuing to spin their wheels, spin their wheels, spin their wheels. But there are people who have seen results from this. So that's a validity enough for them to continue to, maybe someday their diet will be perfect, or they'll find
Right.
some magic supplement and then they'll grow muscle. And what's funny is that nobody will blame their training. They'll blame their
Right.
diet. They'll blame their job, their kids. They'll blame that they haven't got the right supplement, when 9.9 out of 10 times their training is insufficient. It's an insufficient stimulus. So when I switch people over to this style of training, I had one guy gain about 10 pounds in 3 weeks, 6 workouts just doing this. He couldn't put on mass. He had no pecs. It was just flat. It looked like a thin guy. And then he sent me a picture. He was like, I don't know if I'm losing my mind, but I feel like I put on a lot of mass in 3 weeks. I put them side by side. You couldn't believe it. And it's because he implemented an effective stimulus. If the stimulus is correct, your body's trying to survive. It's going to adapt very quickly. Will it adapt, and will you grow as much muscle as you want? Maybe, maybe not, probably not, but it will adapt. And that's another thing. People think that the appearance of their physique is 100% under their control.
Oh, right. Yeah.
And it's not. It's absolutely not. You cannot sculpt and mold your physique into whatever you want it to be, but you can make it the best.
Yeah. No, I think that's a really good point too, because a lot of people don't realize how much genetics do play a role in it. But then there's also the people that try to blame everything on genetics, and they haven't put in the work to get there. Because you don't know what you got until you actually hit your genetic potential, and most people haven't hit their genetic potential either. So now, what about guys that one big argument I think I get from a lot of people is that they say, well, John, what you can do this, right? You can train 3 days a week, or you can do Jay's, workouts, do one set to failure because you already built a physique, right? And there's some truth, in the science behind the fact that it's easier to maintain muscle and maintain a physique than it is to build it, right? I mean, I don't think anyone argues with that. But people say, oh, well, that basically they try to dismiss all of this by saying that that's all that I'm doing. I've made gains for sure doing this, but what do you say to that? Like, what's the counter argument to that? How can you prove to people, or is it true, that it doesn't matter where you're at? It's not just maintenance, that this would work for a new person. It'd work for a medium lifter, for an advanced lifter, because what's kind of your response to that?
Well, the thing is, when you're a beginner, it's kind of like going out in the sun when you've been stuck in the Northeast for 6 months. Any amount of ultraviolet light is going to get your skin to make some sort of adaptation. And this is why so many workout programs work. It's because when you are a beginner, any sort of stimulus is going to make your body change.
Right.
But believe it or not, it's when people reach this plateau, and everyone have done it. I've done it. You reach a plateau where you're like, well, I trained 5 or 6 days a week. I've been doing it for years. I've got nothing to show for it. And you can't really quite figure out what's wrong. And usually what it is you're unaware that the stimulus has to be harder. Your body doesn't want to carry a lot of muscle tissue. We evolved in a food scarce environment. Muscle is metabolically expensive. So your body's going to try to build the minimal amount of muscle possible. And when you get to a point where you've built a good base on pretty much anything, your body's going to be very reluctant to building muscle. This is where actually high intensity training comes in and works. What most people will try to do is add volume, which is wrong, because you're just going to end up overtraining. But this is for everybody because it is just the basic physiology of training. 1 set, 2 sets, 3 sets. You can do 3 if you want, but the vast majority of the literature shows that if you appropriately reach momentary muscle failure, you have recruited and fatigued, again, in sequential order, all of the available motor units, slow, intermediate, and fast, and stimulated them. Right. Doing additional sets, this is the analogy I like to use. It's like, you hit a fly with a fly swatter, and then you shot it with a machine gun, and then you shot it with a bazooka. You got it the first time. You didn't need to kill it 2 more times. And that's what most people are doing. The reason most people would not see results from one set to failure is because they're envisioning the way they perform a set. The
Right.
way you perform a set is not going to do anything because you're not adhering to proper stimulation of a muscle or proper exercise performance to begin with. So you don't want to take your workout and then just do one set. So when people say one set to failure, that can't possibly work. Well, that's, envisioning the way they do it. But if you do a set properly, you won't be able to tolerate more than one set. And if you do a set properly, the vast majority of research has shown that it results in no additional benefit. There was a study done by Wayne Westcott in 1995 where he compared the results of 1, 2, and 3 sets. He found 3 and 1 set had the exact same, the groups that did 3 sets and the groups that did 1 set had the exact same improvement in muscle size and strength. And believe it or not, the group that did 2 sets had the worst. Why that is, I'm not really sure. But once you've stimulated the muscle, here's a good analogy as well. We're basically trying to turn on a button. Once we press that button, pressing the button more is not going to speed up the process. Mike Menser used this analogy. It's like getting into the elevator, pushing the button for your floor, and then pushing it 20 more times, expecting the elevator to move faster. That one set turned on the growth mechanism. Push the button. You can't do it over and over again. So it works for everybody. I've trained kids as young as 8. I trained a guy who's 84 years old with COPD. I trained a guy with MS in an electric wheelchair. I trained a guy with one leg. It really doesn't. Everybody, it's just basic, proper exercise physiology, and pretty much everybody can do it. But what I would say is if your results suck, which most people, they're not really happy with their results, implement a higher intensity approach and you will see your body grow almost instantly. That's usually what's missing.
Yeah, it's interesting what you said about like doing the set. Like most people would think about doing one set the way they do a set. But once I started to understand what you're saying here and really thought about this, now like I changed the way I lifted. That's why I stopped doing bench press, because I was like, that's not the most effective way that I'm going to stimulate my chest to absolute failure, because I'm going to fail way before I can actually, before I'm not going to be able to put the weight up before I actually reach true muscle failure. So now I'm thinking about recruiting the maximum number of muscle fibers. So now when I'm doing, machine bench exercise, I'm thinking about, I don't need to go all the way back here. That's not going to do anything. And I'm like, and I don't need to go all the way up here because that's also not going to do anything. So I'm like staying in this range because I'm thinking about what am I actually trying to accomplish. And then I'm thinking about focusing on squeezing the muscle, not just moving it for some X number of reps. And, it all kind of followed. And so then it made sense because it's like, yeah, I think the way that most people envision doing a set, that's not going to do anything if you do one set to failure that way. But if you're doing it in the way where you're really thinking about exhausting the muscle fibers, where where it's a controlled, slow contraction. All I'm trying to do, I don't care how much weight it is, I'm just trying to get to the point where that thing is not going to move at all anymore. Then I know I've hit the push the button, right? And that's that's the thing. Like that was a light bulb moment for me when I realized that, and it just changed. The other thing about it too is injury, right? Because what I found was that, I'm sure everyone who's lifted for any amount of time has been injured, right? And that caused me in my life more setbacks than anything else. And so it's like training like this, there's no way I'm going to get injured, right? I'm not doing free weight exercises. I'm not doing heavy weights. I'm doing slow controlled movements. Like it just makes so much more sense. If that was the only thing that this did was just prevent me from being injured, that is going to get me better results.
Yeah, I've supervised. So in my studios, my personal training studios, I trained people for about 7 years, did about 50 to 70 sessions per week. So I've supervised over 20,000 sessions and no one has ever gotten hurt ever. Why? Yeah. Reduction in force. Force equals mass times acceleration. There is a limit to how much force your connective tissue and bones can handle before they fail. Just like if you were to, take a 2x4 and put it between 2 bricks, there's a limit to how much force that can take before it snaps in the middle. Your body's the same way. But the goal of the exercise is not to lift the weight. It is to use the weight to load the targeted muscle area to generate a deep amount of stress through inroading and muscle fatigue. The weight is merely a tool to create tension in the muscle so we can produce some stress. The weight simply comes along for the ride. That's all it's there for. And believe it or not, another huge misunderstanding is muscles don't produce movement. They produce force.
Right.
If acting on a limb, they can permit movement. But another job your muscles play is to prevent movement. That is another job that your muscles do by creating force. So believe it or not, you can recruit, stimulate, and build muscle not moving the weight at all. It's called static contractions. You will recruit and fatigue all available motor units in sequential fashion by holding a weight out, by pushing against something that doesn't move. Movement is not necessary to stimulate the mTOR pathway, but there are neural adaptations. Some people will only be able to exhibit or express the strength throughout the range of motion they train in. So we need to use some range of motion for that neural adaptation aspect. But the goal, again, we identify the function of the targeted muscle area. In this case, the biceps. The function is palm supination, elbow flexion, and shoulder flexion. And what we do is we load the muscle using a weight throughout its congruent joint function.
Right.
That's all we're doing. That's how we select an exercise. And then we bring that muscle tissue to a level of fatigue, preferably muscle failure, that it is not accustomed to turn on this growth stimulus. The bench press, not a good exercise. Why? Because the function of the pecs is humeral adduction.
Right.
Doesn't even address that function of the pec. A lot of squats a good exercise. You've got people doing, Arnold presses, however they do it, twisting the weight, this kind of shit. Well, if you put your hand on your shoulder and, supinate your palm, you notice nothing happens to your shoulder. So, exactly. It doesn't affect the shoulder at all. So poor exercise selection is another problem with this. A lot of people think that free weights will make you stronger than machines.
Right.
Well, the problem is if you're the way you measure strength is your ability to do a free weight exercise, then if you're only doing machines, you're not going to be able to demonstrate as much strength on a free weight exercise. A lot of people don't understand that bench press, squat, and deadlift, there's a huge technical skill component to it. And the more you practice those movements, the more efficient you're going to become, the more weight you're going to be able to move. So people say, oh, machines don't make you strong because you won't be able to bench press as much. Well, because you didn't practice the bench press. Duh.
Right.
So there's a lot of things that people don't understand about the physiology here, which is leading people in the wrong directions. And preferably, I like machines. Machines are safer. Tons of people think they want to add a balance challenge into an exercise. All that's doing is reducing the amount of fatigue you can generate in a target muscle group and increasing the risk of injury. So, I would just recommend to most people, just keep it simple. Free weights, machines, whatever you prefer. But like you said, you may not be reaching failure on a bench press. You're hitting a sticking point. You're hitting a mechanical sticking point, which may appear to be muscle failure, but it's not. It's an indifference in the strength and resistance curve. And a lot of good machines, Nautilus machines, hammer strike machines, will overcome this mechanical sticking point, so you're actually reaching failure. And another thing, a lot of people realize when they try this, like, oh, well, I did a set to failure. I don't really feel like I did anything. Well, it's because you didn't hit failure. You hit a sticking point. So in a lot of cases, I recommend people, you can absolutely optimally stimulate your muscle in one set, but it doesn't mean you always can, and it doesn't mean you always will.
Right.
So if you're using a piece of crap equipment, you probably can't. Right. And if for some reason you didn't quite get there, you probably didn't. So there's nothing wrong with doing multiple sets. My point is you can stimulate it in one set. And if you learn how to do this properly, you're going to end up saving yourself a hell of a lot of time if you do.
And when I do multiple sets now, because I encounter that sometime, and tell me if I'm doing it wrong, my logic says what I do is I don't take any rest time. I just lower the weight a little bit and then keep going, because then I'm thinking, okay, well, now I am going to maximally exhaust the muscle fibers because I'm not giving them time to recover. The slow twitch fibers that got burned out already, those can't be recruited at this point. So it's going to have to recruit some of the reserve fibers, and then that's so it's really, it's two sets, but it's really just one extended set because I'm just dropping the weight and then continuing to go.
Right. Drop sets are a super effective thing to implement when you're using subpar equipment or free weights, stuff like this. But yeah, it's really just an extended set. There's no good reason to rest in between sets. But like you said, there's an ego side of it, right? You're doing 120-pound dumbbell presses. If you don't take any rest in between sets, you're going to have to go down and wait. And that hot girl in the corner might be looking at you thinking you're a weak bitch and she won't want to talk. That's what's going on. That's probably
Exactly.
what's going on in men's heads. So they
Yeah.
take 3 to 5 minutes so that way they can do it. But we need to remember, guys, the gym is not a performance test. It's not a
Right.
performance competition. You are there to stimulate improvements in strength, not demonstrate it. So if you were to see me in the gym, I would probably look very, very weak. But in the event I had to go demonstrate that strength, strong as hell. But remember, you got to put the ego aside, use an adequate weight so that way you don't end up injuring yourself. And that way you can perform the exercise well. Don't be too concerned about how much you can do on the exercise. Be concerned with how well you can perform it. And that usually requires lighter weight.
Yeah. Well, the ironic thing too, I was thinking about too, with like you said, bench press, squat, deadlift, they're technical skills, right? And if you get good at bench press, that means you have to use more weight to get the same stimulus, which means more injury. So it's actually counterproductive to lift more weight. Like ideally, if I had to use only free weights based on what I've learned from you, I would want to use as little weights as possible, right? I would want to try and figure out what's the lowest weight that I can still get the stimulus with, because then I have the least risk of injury. And, when that weight starts to get up, then I start to get into the riskier, area. So I don't want to use heavy weights if I can, again, the ego thing is what gets us down that path. I've been there. So
that's exactly right too, because the more weight you do, the more your bones and connective tissue have to bear, the more shearing forces, the more dangerous it gets. When I was 19, the most I ever benched was 385 pounds. I was about 180 pounds. Now I'm about 210, 212. I can't bench anywhere near that. Does that mean I'm weaker? No, it's just I haven't practiced the bench press in 10, 12 years. So, you can't let the bench press, identify how strong you are, because it really doesn't matter. It's just kind of an ego thing. But at the same time, I can squat over 500 pounds. Why? Because I like to squat and I implement it into my workout. So I have that skill component, that neural adaptation with that too. So not that these exercises are horrible, but there are certainly better options, safer options.
Yeah. And now what about, I read the book, Why Weightlifting Doesn't Work, right? The X3 guy. Now, a lot of what he said was similar to what you said, right? Like to you, but what's the differences? What are the main things? Because he also advocates, one set to failure, right? Variable resistance as opposed to, muscle exhaustion, recruiting all the fibers. What are some of the things that he says that's different than your approach?
So I'm not really familiar with all the principles he talks about, but I am familiar with the device he uses, and it's resistance band based, right?
Yeah, it's like a base, I think, that you step on, right? And then a bar that uses resistance bands. And like the idea behind it that he, talks about is the idea that kind of like, getting rid of that sticking point, like having the force where it's where it's you have a constant force, along the path of the movement, so that you're able to, you don't end up having the problems like we just talked about with bench press.
Well, see, that's funny because that literally creates that problem, which is very bizarre that he's promoting that, because you have a linearly increasing resistance against a strength curve with almost every muscle group that is bell-shaped. That's the problem.
Yeah.
That piece of equipment creates a sticking point. For instance, if I'm doing a curl on that piece of equipment, I'm getting no resistance in the fully extended position, which is good. But I'm getting increasing resistance towards contraction.
Oh, I see.
It goes less muscle torque or strength in the extended position. You get the most at 90 degrees. This is where you want the most resistance, because you have the most actin and myosin cross bridging, most actin and myosin overlap. But then as you go to contract, the actin and myosin kind of bunch up and get in each other's way, so they don't cross bridge as well, and you get weaker again. But with that device, you're getting the most resistance here. So it's upside down.
Yeah.
And that's going to happen with every single movement too. Something like the chest press or the squat might be okay
Right.
because as you're pressing, you have such a reduction in the moment arm, which is the distance between the load and the axis
Mhm.
of rotation. When I'm out here, my moment arm is long. When I'm up
Right.
here, it's very short. So that way you can actually overcome more resistance. So it would kind of work for that for a press or a squat. But for a triceps extension, pretty much every other movement, again, a deltoid raise, you get the most at about halfway due to actin-to-myosin overlap. It would be completely backwards and upside down for a lot of movements. It's
Okay.
literally the opposite of what you want,
Okay.
especially with a pulling movement too. You know, you're getting
Right.
no resistance in the extended position, which is great. But again, you are going to hit a sticking point, and that's what we want to avoid. So that's why I don't like bands. I don't like that piece of equipment. But remember, if you are generating stress and fatiguing your muscles, anything will work.
Right.
It's just, are you going to get past that plateau? Everybody kind of ends up seeing at some point. Well, unless you understand these concepts, probably not.
Okay. Okay. So then, I was looking into another device that it's there. I think on Indiegogo now. They're not there yet. It's called Speed Fitness,
Oh
SPEEDE.
yeah, yeah,
Right. And that one looked like more like, because I think the principles behind that is that it creates that resistance based on biofeedback. So as you're pushing, it's sensing how much force you're applying, and then it's applying an equal, just under amount of force, so that you're always at the kind of maximum resistance the whole way. And I think you can do like 3 or 4 reps, and
yeah. There you
most
go.
people are like shaking on the fourth
Yeah.
rep. And the idea that they have behind it is that it's getting you that maximum muscle failure in as quick time as possible. Now that, to me, that sounds sound. Does that
Yes.
seem accurate to you? Okay.
That's there have been machines for about the past 20 years doing this. They just haven't really caught on or been popular. You remember that machine at the convention, that Areta machine? I don't
Oh
know if
yeah,
you
yeah,
saw it.
yeah.
Same thing. You're pushing on it as hard as you can, except in that case, the resistance, the strength curve is going to take care of itself because you're just not able to push hard in the positions where you don't generate as much muscle torque. But that's kind of a more complicated way of going about it. But yeah, it works because if you can do that throughout the entirety of the exercise, you're only going to be able to last 3 or 4 reps. I remember
Right,
Elliot Hulls, I think he lasted 3 reps and he couldn't walk after. And that's,
right.
we're
Yeah.
talking about optimal efficiency. And when you train like that, that is going to be, these type of equipment when they come out and when Randy comes out with the Areta machine, these are
Yeah.
going to be revolutions in
Oh yeah.
exercise, absolute revolutions. But a lot of exercise is based on tradition. There are going to
Yeah.
be people who hop on, but there's going to be a lot of people who hate it and won't. So,
Yeah.
we're
See,
fighting tradition at that point.
I feel like what you're teaching now is something with these machines coming out and stuff, like, and the science is there. Because as I started looking to, I look into more of the science, and I think with these machines and stuff, that in 5 years, 10 years, this is going to be the basic. Like, everybody's going to do this because it's going to be so dumb to do the other way, right? And it's not going to make sense to even have commercial gyms, because these machines, like, the effort, what you're trying to do is like, why have all these weights? All you're trying to do is just hit the maximum exhaustion of recruitment of all the muscle fibers, and that's all you need to do, right? So
Mhm.
I think that, like, you're so far ahead of the curve, and all these guys that are like laughing at this now, just wait 5 years from now. I think it's going to be the main thing, because the science keeps on showing it, and now we have the technology to make these devices that are
Mhm.
able to apply that variable resistance and get that feedback. So, but yeah.
And
By the way, guys,
go
there's a
ahead.
link in the description. If you're, we're going to try and cover a lot of stuff here, but we're running out of time. And, Jay has been very gracious with his time here, answering questions. We'll get to some questions here in a second, but there's some links in the description. Make sure you click down there if you want to book a free 15-minute call and find out about, Jay's system, or if you just want to go to Golden Era. It's Golden Era. I don't have the link,
System.
but oh yeah, there you go.
Mhm.
GoldenEraSystem.com. Down below, you can check that out as well. And, like I said, I mean, if you don't believe what we're talking about here, and I'm not being paid to do anything here, by the way, full disclosure, right? So there's no affiliate deals, nothing like this at all. I just, what Jay did worked for me, and I want to help you guys as well, and I want to help Jay out as well. So check it out, and if you're not believing what I'm saying, It's fine. Like I was skeptical. I was so damn because I put 20 years into my training and I built a good physique, better than 99% of guys on this planet. And so, for me to like change what I was doing, I was like, yeah, no, I don't. I already got this figured out. But I listened, and it made a difference for me. I mean, the biggest difference for me, that's most important to me, and a lot of you guys that are trying to build businesses and make money and shit, is that I have so much more time and I'm not fucking exhausted all the time. So that's the biggest benefit for me, is even if I didn't get better results, which I am getting better results, but even if I just had the same results and I save myself how many hours, 6-7 hours a week of time, shit, that's well worth it. So whatever, whatever you're making, right now in terms of your job, think about how much 6-7 hours a week of your time is worth. And you owe it to yourself at least to try this out for like a month. You're not going to lose your physique in a month, guys, or even 2 months, if you try this out and it doesn't work for you. But man, you could be saving so much time. Like I wish I would have discovered this 5-10 years ago, and saved myself all the time that I basically wasted in the gym. It's hard for me to admit it, but yeah. So check out the links down below if you haven't already.
Yeah, and the Golden Era system is going to give you a perfect introduction to the concept. It's going to give you workout plans to follow, and dozens and dozens of exercise demonstrations performed with these principles, ranging from free weights, barbells, machines, cables, Smith machines, pretty much everything you'll find at a local gym. I filmed all these videos in a local LA Fitness, and I just did a demonstration showing exactly and instructing exactly how to do these exercises on everything. So it's a great way to get started. And, I discovered this when I was like 23. And as you notice, I have my fitness modeling ads up here. I model for Under Armour, Muscle Tech. And I was stuck at about 188 pounds until I implemented these principles, training harder and less frequency. And it wasn't until I started implementing these, I was able to put on enough size to do all this. So, yeah. I mean, it was life-changing for me, and pretty much everybody who's tried the system, life-changing for them too.
Let's see. Let's get to a couple of questions here. I know I just saw a super chat come in from Brian, so I'll hit you first, then I'll come back to the questions. If you guys want priority, you can do the super chat. It's not a big deal though. So Brian says here, how much protein a day are you guys eating? I know you said you've upped the amount you take, John, to around 300 grams a day. Thank you both. Yeah. So what are you doing as far as protein?
I'm not really measuring it. I'm just eating a ton of it. Yeah. So you're going to want to eat about, if you're overweight, if you're fat, 1 gram of protein per pound of target body weight. Even if you're skinny, 1 gram of protein per pound of target body weight. Say you're 150, you want to be 175. You want to be eating around 175 or more, because I actually just put a video out explaining that the food labels are generally pretty inaccurate.
Yeah.
So if something says 20 grams of protein, you're probably really only getting like 12. So I say overshoot the hell out of it. Dr. Gabrielle Lyon on YouTube, she's a great, she's been doing a lot of research on protein too, and she's finding that you almost can't even do too much. So what I say is eat a big mess of protein for every meal. For everybody over 150 grams a day is just fine.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's interesting too, because I mean, that was one of the things I started applying to, was because I started seeing the research on this as well. And there was even some research where I forget what the study was, where they had, people who were lifting, who were like novice, experienced, and then people who didn't lift at all, and they upped their protein. And even the people who didn't lift at all during that time gained muscle from eating more protein. So it was like, literally you can eat protein and gain muscle without doing a damn thing. So that was really convincing to me. And so I started upping my protein, and then I started researching into the protein pathways to convert to carbohydrates and fats. And it is such a expensive pathway that your body does not want to do that at all. In fact, there was those, they call it rabbit starvation, right? The guys the Arctic explorers that, they landed, I forget where it was, like North Pole or something, or, the Arctic Circle. And there was only rabbits. And all they ate was rabbits, and it was all protein there, because those rabbits have no fat on them, and they'd starve to death because they couldn't get enough. You need something besides protein in order to survive, because your body can't convert the protein into enough energy to power your brain, and you die, and your organs, and you die. Right. So not that, you guys don't have to worry about eating too much protein and dying. If you
Unless you're on
only
a
ate
carnivore
protein,
diet.
right? Yeah, if you only, but carnivore diet, you're gonna have plenty of fat too. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, and then and then the other thing that a lot of people are worried about all the time is like how much kidneys, like those protein affect, and that I think that was just some bad science for a while when they thought that it affected, because there's really no limit that they've ever found that it actually damages you unless you already had a kidney problem, and then that could exasperate it. But
Could be vegan propaganda too. Who knows?
yeah,
Yeah, the protein itself is hypertrophic. I mean, it stimulates, it increases. So things can increase protein synthesis, but it needs to increase protein synthesis into a hypertrophic level.
right.
Protein does. Protein passes that hypertrophic boundary, and protein alone will grow muscle tissue. Obviously, not optimal. You want to add some resistance training into it, but yeah, that's exactly right. It'll increase protein synthesis so much that muscle hypertrophy will occur without training.
And I've been hitting about, like I said, about 300 grams. I don't even really count it because I just have everything is protein, right? I have like Quest protein chips, protein bars, protein shakes, beef jerky, non-fat Greek yogurt. Like I just egg whites, like liquid egg whites. I just everything I snack on, edamame beans, like everything is pretty much protein, so that it just makes it easy for me. So
Yeah, that's kind of what I do. I go and get one of those pre-made roasted chickens at the grocery store and eat the whole fucking
yeah,
thing.
yeah,
That's pretty much what I
yeah.
do.
Let's see. Ernie says it's hard to wrap your head around training 1 to 2 times a week, but the proof is in the pudding. Went from 195 to over 215 consistently. So there you go. There's someone who actually did it. So yeah, it's crazy too. It's like eating the super high protein. I mean, I'm getting leaner and I'm still gaining muscle, which is insane as well. So let me see what else. We had some good questions here. Okay.
And it's not going to stop your heart either. That's also some very, very, very bad science.
Oh, Brian wanted to know if I'm still doing OMAD training this way. I actually adopted my protocol a little bit. So I'm basically fasting until about 2 p.m. most days. And then I'm just eating protein. And then I eat the rest of my food at like 5 or 6. I found that just working better because the more kind of protein that you're able to break apart during the day, the more chances for the protein synthesis, right?
Yeah, that's true. Dr. Stu Phillips up at McMaster University, he's been studying protein for a while. He found that if you break it up throughout just a handful of meals a day, your body is able to use it better for muscle growth than if you have it all at once. So I do the same thing you do. I'm just not hungry till about 2 and eat from like 2 to 9 usually.
Yeah.
Bunch of
protein. Yeah, and I think that seems to work the best. Like, some days I do the full OMAD, but most days now I want to get as much protein in as possible, and I'm still getting the benefits of fasting to a degree. So
yeah, exactly, getting them both.
Yeah, let's see. Oh, here's what Mazamil Ahmad wants to ask Jay how to train legs using the 1 set to failure rule.
Pretty much any way you would train anything else. I think he might be referring to how to do a squat with 1 set to failure.
Yeah.
What you want to do is you want to put the bar catches in a safe position. So you want to get in your squatted position and place the bar catches above your shoulders, those things that catch the bar if you drop it, and just do 1 set to failure that way. And on a leg press, most of the time, if it's a selectorized, like a weight stack leg press, you're going to be able to lower it and be fine. I don't recommend using that 45-degree sled type leg press because you might drop that one on you. But it's pretty easy with free weights. Always use bar catches. And if you're using selectorized equipment, it's just going to take care of itself.
And one thing I would say, I haven't done squats in a while, but I used to practice failing out on a squat with a lighter weight so that you get used to the feeling of, because I think for most people, it's pretty damn scary to fail out on the squat with a lot of weight on there, even when you have the bar catchers, because it's like just, it's just scary. But
yeah, and you might, if you're in a, typical commercial gym, you might worry some people, but whatever.
All right. We got, this guy had some interesting, it's a couple part thing. Let me see what he said. He says the problem with doing 1 set for 1 minute and 30 seconds to complete failure is the energy system. After the first 12 seconds, you deplete your creatine phosphate. And he said, so you would think you would use your glycogen, but when your glycogen runs out and you're shocking the body, it's running from the tiger. What is your body going to use for energy? I believe it breaks down your amino acids, gluconeogenesis. So diet comes into play. Do you need a pre-workout? Do you need the carb load before doing this one set?
No, no, that's not how it works. Yeah, creatine, phosphocreatine is used in the first few seconds of exercise, but your body is using glucose throughout the entire thing. You have a
Yeah.
lot of glucose. It's, you start, a lot of the reason you start to reach failure, it might have to do with the glucose affinity to be able to produce the muscle contraction. But if you were out of glucose, you would be laying on the floor. Someone would
Right.
have to pick you up. The
Yeah.
only time you're really out of glucose is, consider if you were stuck on like an abandoned island and you had no food for days and you could barely move.
Right.
That's when you're using fat for energy. If you're moving, you're losing glucose. So it seems like he's got a lot of preconceptions that are just wrong.
Yeah.
You're not breaking down amino acids through gluconeogenesis during a set. Absolutely not. That is like a huge, long pathway. You don't need a pre-workout. Should you carb load? You just need to have glucose in your body.
Yeah.
You really should. Carbs have been, demonized recently, but carbs are okay. For fruit, vegetables, something like that, I highly recommend you have some glucose in your body. Definitely.
Yeah, and I mean, you store what, 600 grams of carbohydrates, of glycogen in your body, right? Because you've got like 300 grams in liver and about 2 to 300 grams in the skeletal muscle
Mhm.
system, and so like in order to deplete that, I used to do a training system called Body Opus, which you would do carb depletion, where you would do these like just like tons of sets without eating any carbs for like a couple of days, where you'd completely deplete your glycogen stores, and you just feel like shit. And then you'd carb load up, and they would super compensate, and you'd have like super compensated glycogen stores. But it was, I mean, you had to really like to deplete your glycogen. It takes multiple days and a lot of exercise in order to
Yeah.
do that. So
Yeah. And I mean, carbohydrates paired with training and protein is super hypertrophic. Like if
yeah,
you want to grow muscle, you should be having some carbohydrates, some glucose. Doesn't need to come from white bread, but it can come from fruits and vegetables and sweet potatoes and squash. But the research is pretty clear that if you combine the carbohydrates, you're going to experience better muscle growth.
yeah. For you guys just join us, I see some people are coming in. Make sure you check the links down below. We're talking with Jay here. You might want to check the beginning of the video to catch what we were saying at the beginning. Jay dropped some really good value bombs there, but make sure you click the links down below and check out Jay's system, goldenarasystem.com. And then if you want to book a call and find out if Jay can help you, it helps to have some accountability, have someone walking you through, making sure you're doing the right thing. Go do that as well. I definitely encourage you to do it. So
Yeah, guys, I offer a 12-week coaching program where I'm in your pocket for 12 weeks teaching you everything, really getting into the weeds and making sure you're doing everything perfectly. And so far, the transformations have been insane. So a lot of the times people end up missing something trying to do it on their own, but you wouldn't go to court and defend yourself. You would hire a
right.
lawyer, you'd hire a professional. So if you want the optimal results for your body, you should, I'm here to guide you along the way and teach you a ton of stuff.
Exactly. Yeah. Let me see here. A couple more here. Then we got to wrap this up, guys. But Swearworks says, does this apply to body weight only exercise as well? I think we kind of covered this, but
Mhm.
yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the goal of an exercise is to produce tension in the muscle, or just force for the muscle to work against. You can do this with bodyweight exercises. Something like a chin up and a dip are so damn effective, it's insane. Even a push up. These are ridiculous exercises. Just what you want to do is slow, controlled, and take them to failure.
Yeah.
And with my golden era system, I'm giving my HIIT home workout with that for free this week. And there's a bunch of body weight exercises in there with demonstrations. So you can do high intensity training with body weight exercises. So I've got all that covered for you too.
It's funny too, like with the body weight exercises, and you're saying the isometric contractions as well earlier. I was thinking about this. It's a lot of bodybuilders, like another myth that they do before they do contest prep is they start doing really high reps, thinking that they're defining the muscle more, like, and I was thinking about that. Is the other thing that they're doing is they're posing in the mirror, flexing really hard for like hours at a time. And probably why they're seeing the results they're seeing has more to do with that
Yeah.
than it does, because now they're doing like total train to failure because they're holding those, contractions until they can't do it anymore. So yeah, I thought that was
Yeah, they're literally, that's a workout itself, man. Like,
yeah,
I mean, that's basically a time static contraction workout.
yeah, yeah. Okay, let's see. A couple more we've got here. I do 4 sets of 25 to get to 100 total pull-ups. So it's better to do 1 set to failure, which will probably be 30 to 35 total pull-ups, and be done with that. I think he's
Yes.
missing is that true?
Yes.
Well,
There's
for
the total volume has nothing to do with the muscle growth stimulus.
but he's trying to get oh, sorry, go ahead. Yeah.
And we don't. Yeah. So his goal, it appears, is to get to 100 pull-ups. Why? Because it's an even number, I guess. Your body doesn't know what 100 pull-ups is. The amount of times the joint opens and closes has nothing to do with the growth stimulus.
Right.
It's about applying as much tension and effort in the targeted muscle area as possible. So if you just did 1 set to 30 or 35 pull-ups, you would be stimulating that growth stimulus not only more effectively, but more efficiently than just doing an arbitrary 100 pull-ups with less joint wear and tear. You got to remember, every time you open and close this joint, it's like a door hinge. Potentially could wear out.
Okay, yeah, I misunderstood. I thought he was trying to get to 100 total continuous pull-ups, and he was trying to figure out the best way to get to that. that'd be tough to do. I mean, you'd have to periodize the training to do that over time.
30 to 35, that's still pretty good too. I imagine he's moving relatively quickly. So what I would recommend doing is slowing it down, leaving the muscle under load. Do about 10 to 15 slowly. It's going to be more effective and safer than doing 30 to 35 quickly.
Yeah, definitely. Okay. Let me see what else we got. Oh, how about this one? Israel wants to know, did either of you build your physique with HIIT?
Yes, I did. So when I was about 22, 23, I wanted to become a fitness model, mostly to piss off an ex-girlfriend. I don't know if it worked. It might have. So I started doing the research. I wasn't growing. I was training 6 days a week. I was overtrained, exhausted. I had a sleep test done because I thought I had sleep apnea because I was tired all the time.
Yeah.
And then I stumbled across these principles by Dr. Doug McGuff. He wrote a cool book called Body by Science.
Yeah.
And that light bulb went off. You got it? Yeah.
Yeah.
That light bulb went off. I go, damn, this makes a lot of sense. I cut my workout volume in half. And within about 5 months, it went from about 188, 189 to about 202, 203. And just blew up. And the only thing I had done different is train to failure, less volume, less frequency. So I did build my physique, which allowed me to become a published fitness model with these principles.
And I think as far as he might be asking about HIIT as far as cardio workouts too. I think someone was asking too about cardio, if cardio was good for weight loss. And I was going to say, like, I used to do long distance I mean, I still do long distance running, but I did a lot more miles like we were talking about. And now I'm essentially doing HIIT workouts for cardio. And man, I'm burning way more calories, even though I'm running less. I didn't believe, the EPOC effect was so great, but it's insane. It's insane how much more it is, because hitting the high intensity is, I mean, I guess I'm not doing like the true HIIT cardio where you'd be sprinting at all out effort, right? Hardly anyone actually really does it. It's more of just increased intensity, not the true HIIT workouts, but
yeah. I mean, I haven't really seen, with my clients, I never really prescribed cardio for additional weight loss because it seems to, I'm dealing with obese people usually who have out of control appetites, and cardio is going to increase their appetite and they're going to out eat their deficit. So,
yeah.
And, Dr. Erman Poncer came out with a cool book called Burn. I'm not sure if you've heard of it. And what he found through his research was that your body adjusts its resting metabolism based on energy expenditure. So if you
Yep.
burn an extra 1,000 calories, your resting expenditure will go down 1,000 calories, equaling a net calorie deficit of 0. So what he found was individuals in the Hadza tribe, the African indigenous tribe who hunt and gathered, had the same energy expenditure as us sitting at a desk in Western culture. So energy expenditure seems not to make a difference.
Yeah, and I can, I can tell you from my own, when I was training for that 100-mile race a couple of years ago, I was literally running 70, 80 miles per week every single week, and I did not lose weight. I mean, that's a lot of I mean, most guys, when they're like, oh, I'm going to add cardio to my workout, they run 5 miles a week, maybe 6, 7 miles a week. I was running 80, and I'm 230 pounds. So 80 miles a week at 230 pounds, that's a shit ton of calories. But my metabolism just slowed down. Or I also got a lot more hungry. And so it's just, cardio is not a good way to lose weight.
No, it's just inefficient.
Yeah.
You want a negative energy balance, and it's more efficient and obviously less damaging on your body to just restrict food intake.
Yeah.
That's what body fat is for. It is to, make up the difference for when there's not enough food in the environment. It's not to make up the difference when you expend more. That's not how your body designed. Your body's using glucose most of the time.
Now, the thing that I do like though is like with the running workouts I'm doing now is that because I burn some extra calories, I can eat more protein.
Yeah.
And so then that actually ends up working out pretty good. So
there's also kind of a negative feedback loop with protein too. You get sick of it. So you're
Yeah.
really not going to overeat. You're not going to eat 5,000 calories a day in protein. Good luck.
Yeah. All right. I think that's pretty much all the questions I see here. Oh, wait a minute. Is there? Here we go. Ernie did a super chat. He says, I have Golden Era in the ARM program bundle. If I wanted to bring up my shoulders, would I program them the same way as the ARM program?
Well, I might be coming out with it. So I also offer an advanced arm training program with the Golden Era. These are some cool techniques I learned from a Mr. Olympia bodybuilding coach who has a master's degree in biomechanics and all this cool stuff. And he taught me some cool stuff, and I applied high intensity training to them. So I have this advanced arm training program that I find is absolutely insane. But when it comes to shoulders, I'd have to come up with another program because it comes down to how you're training the shoulders, the exercises you're using. I can't really give a general recommendation because it depends on the intensity of the exercise and the volume of all the other exercises. So basically, if you want to bring up a lagging muscle group, it's very simple. Train the muscle group that responds very well, less, and then train the muscle group that's not responding as well, harder, and then wait. That's it. Yeah. So if you have a chest that develops, great, but your arms aren't developing, we'll back off on the chest. It's not going to shrink.
Right.
And then use more of your energy and recovery resources for the lagging muscle group. And that will help bring up that muscle group. It's counterintuitive to what most people believe. They think do more. But most of the time, it's just going to result in absolutely nothing.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. I think that's really good for people that already have a lot of mass too, right? Because your body has a maximum amount of recovery, which is part of the reason why we end up hitting a genetic limit is our ability to recover. And so if you just back off so that your body's not having to recover that a different muscle group, then you've got enough of the resources to recover and grow the part that's lagging. So that makes a lot of sense.
Works every time. I've done it with plenty of clients. It's foolproof if you do it that way.
Awesome. Let's see. One last thing we'll hear, and then we'll wrap this up. Malawa Ugat says, what does Jay say about proponents that say lifting to failure does not work for long term and it can cause burnout to a person's immune system?
That is if you apply lifting to failure to these the volumes that people are doing. So if you're applying lifting to failure to 2-hour workouts 6 days a week, well, then, you're going to overtrain and your immune system will suffer. People need to realize that if you're pushing your body hard to failure, you need to reduce volume, frequency, and in many cases, both. You can't just throw it in to these marathon workouts. Yes, you're going to overtrain. There will be adverse side effects. So these are like the problem when people say, oh, training to failure is bad. It's like, well, if you're applying it to the way you train, of course, you need to make adjustments.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. This is where I guess these people get the whole RPE 6, RPE 7, and then multiple sets, is because if you you can't
Yeah.
do it all the way, and then otherwise you are going to overtrain. But it's better, in my opinion, just to do what Jay's saying and trade it to failure. Get out of the gym, not waste your time. Go do something else with your time instead of just hanging around the gym all day. So
Some people like that, and for them, I guess this isn't for you, but for people
yeah.
who want to use their energy and their time to build other things in their life, you'd be crazy not to do it this way.
Yeah. Awesome.
I was
Well,
able to
thanks,
build
Jay.
many businesses.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks, Jay. I really appreciate you taking the time here. And yeah, hopefully if you guys have any more questions for Jay, like I said, visit one of the 2 links down below, and I'm sure he'll be happy to answer your question, or you can check out, get the answer yourself from his goldenarasystem.com site, where he's got a lot of information on there as well. So
Mhm.
yeah, thanks a lot. And I'll talk to you guys later.